Zig and Sharko is a talkless show about a hyena named Zig that wants to viciously devour a mermaid named Marina. However, her protector, Sharko, refuses to let that happen. Throughout its countless episodes, spread across 4 seasons, there has been a massive story developing, with a wild mythological island, fursuits, and time travel, and I'm going to uncover it all. But first, as you all know, I'm running for President of the United States of America. I am still beating Dung in every poll there is, so we're looking good on that front. Now it's time I reveal my Vice President pick, my running mate. I know it's a little late with the election being less than 30 days from now, but it was a tough choice, with not many options out there. My vice presidential pick is a Rabbid. I don't know which one, there's a lot of them. He's not intelligent and doesn't have any good qualities. VP picks aren't really that important anyway, so this shouldn't sway your vote really. But Rabbid, please, give us a speech. Zig and Sharko. It's a little goofy show you've probably seen. It began airing in December of 2010 and ran all the way into this year, 2024, and has since ended with 4 seasons and a spin-off show called The Adventures of Bernie. The show is about Zig, a hyena that lives on a deserted island in the middle of nowhere and constantly dreams of eating a mermaid named Marina. She lives her life out on a small rock pillar in the ocean not far from Zig. Always protecting her is her boyfriend, Sharko, obviously a shark. Zig and his best friend Bernie, a super genius little hermit crab, plot to outsmart Sharko to eat Marina, but can never do it due to Sharko's brute force and the love for his mermaid. The show has 4 seasons, 78 episodes in each. Each episode is roughly 7 minutes long. Let's do a little math. 7 times 78 is 546, times 4 is 2,184, divided by 60, yep. 36.4 hours, not including the spin-off. I watched all of that in a short period of time, and I am slightly less normal now. It's fine. With all that content, it's a pretty good show, right? Yeah, actually, I was kind of surprised. It is a good show for the first 2 seasons. And then the last 2 get a bit iffy. First, let's introduce our 4 main characters. Zig, a hyena from Africa, and has grown up on this island since he was a baby. With nothing on the island, Marina is his only food option. He really wants to consume her, which doesn't make much sense because she is definitely not the only thing left to eat. Zig is unrelenting, irreverent, and most importantly, hungry. Every episode he tries to eat her, and is always foiled, but he never gives up though. Sharko is the sworn protector of Marina. In the beginning, we know that he has feelings for her, but doesn't really act on them. But eventually, he gets all mushy and lovey-dovey with her. Poor Sharko is probably so stressed, never able to sleep, never able to enjoy life, because God knows where Zig is lurking. Marina is a mermaid, and Zig's desired lunch. She's completely clueless though, and pretty dumb. Throughout all these episodes, she never really gets that Zig is trying to eat her. After the first time he puts her in her mouth, shame on him. But after like the 50th time, you better pick up on something. Bernie is a hermit crab. He is a super genius, basically Jimmy Neutron in crab form. He could care less about eating Marina, but most generally helps Zig to try and achieve his goals. Bernie pretty much just goes along for the ride. He loves Zig. In fact, they're adopted brothers, but he's also friends with Sharko and Marina. In fact, all 4 of them are friends, which really confuses the plot. The final character I will touch on is King Neptune. Like Marina, he's an idiot, and he has the hots for her, going as far as taking her for his own, which Sharko doesn't appreciate. He appears in just a handful of episodes, enough to make him noteworthy, but not consequential. After season 1, King Neptune completely disappears and is never heard from again. Did he move away, or was he consumed? We may never know. Personally, I don't care. He was a terrible person, if mermen are considered people. All he did was exploit Marina. There are so many more characters that I will talk about, but they are too minor and don't deserve their own section, as they predominantly only have 1 appearance. The episodes in season 1 play out like Tom and Jerry or Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. Like I've already said, Zig tries to eat Marina and Sharko protects her, obliterating Zig in the process. There's a lot of that. Every episode just about boils down to that, actually. Sometimes a boat drops off a new gadget or tool Zig and Bernie can use, or some natural event takes place, or some other sea creature comes into play. But it all comes back to Zig trying to chomp down on some mermaid tail. But with all these little random occurrences that assist with the extra plot, it begins to create a lot of questions as to why it happens, and I will explore this in so much more depth later. First, I'm going to go over the somewhat linear story throughout the 4 seasons. Season 1 doesn't have much story. Sharko and Marina live together under the sea in a house. Even though they live together, it's really weird how bashful Sharko is when anything relationship related is brought up. He acts like he has a crush on her and hasn't professed his love yet. Eventually, when his parents come around, he pretends he isn't with Marina, and instead, Zig wears a shark suit made of walrus fur. He fears his shark parents will disapprove of his interspecies breeding. He eventually comes clean and they approve of it, so Sharko proposes to Marina. After this, there isn't too much story building. Their shenanigans continue as they have been until the very beginning of Season 2. In Season 2, Sharko and Marina move to the beach, into a giant sandcastle. Zig and Bernie are kicked off their turf and live in a crashed cargo plane. Inside the cargo plane is a new character, Aldo, the pilot of the plane. He crashed the plane by accidentally setting his coffee on essentially an off button, so the plane crashed on the island. It's unknown how long he's been out there, but at this point, he is really out of touch. Now that Sharko and Marina have moved to the shore, so have many sea creatures, creating a whole little town on the beach. Another new character is Poseidon, who is Marina's father. So yeah, she's like part deity. He is super protective, and Sharko has to win him over, which he does. Poseidon isn't in the season a ton, but does come into play when they've exhausted all options and need his help. And the opposite of Poseidon is another deity that lives inside the volcano, none other than Hades. Just like Zig, he wants Marina. However, it's for a spouse. In one of his attempts to take her, he shapeshifts into a cute panda that Marina becomes infatuated with. Zig, Sharko, and Bernie work together to get Marina back, but is no match for, a literal god, but Poseidon is, so he rescues his daughter. Besides that episode, and a very small handful of others, Hades doesn't appear at all. From what I can gather online, the common consensus is that after Season 1, the show got bad. I disagree, but also, I didn't grow up with it, so I don't have any nostalgia bias. The second season is still good, but it loses a lot of what made it Zig and Sharko, mainly Zig's main goal, eating Marina. Now with all these creatures on the beach, there was absolutely no reason why he had to eat Marina. He had plenty of options. Like, even the creatures on the beach eat food, so Zig could have just had some of theirs. Personally, I think that's probably a better solution than, murder. The other thing that detracts from his main goal is that he helps Sharko and Marina a lot in this season, essentially becoming friends with them. This occurred in Season 1 as well, but the instances were few and far between. Now, with their constant camaraderie, why are you trying to consume your friend? It began to lose a little bit of meaning. Another sizable component in this season was the flashbacks to their childhood. In Season 1, there was an entire episode dedicated to Zig returning to his homeland of Africa. But now in Season 2, they retcon that. And I don't really think it was a bad thing. The new backstory is that Zig and Bernie were adopted by a gorilla, and she became their mother. It's also revealed that Zig and Bernie grew up together, and were friends with Sharko and Marina. In these flashbacks, we also meet their soon-to-be daddy, another gorilla, who they abandon in some Arctic tundra, but ultimately bring him back because their mommy was angry and sad. In 2 of the flashback episodes, they end with showing the apes on a cruise ship enjoying their golden years together. So that's why they don't show up in the rest of the show. There is a different episode where 3 of Zig's cousins come to visit, presumably from Africa, and this episode came out after the flashbacks, and thus makes it really confusing. If he has cousins, he knows his family. Not saying he couldn't have been adopted still, but they certainly portray it as Zig just appeared on the island one day without prior knowledge. Besides their flashbacks, nothing story building wise really happens. One of the later episodes in the season, Sharko proposes to Marina. Again, I guess I thought they were married already, but I don't know. They've been living together for 2 seasons now. They've grown up with each other. I guess they just retconned the last proposal. Bernie also finds love with the starfish, the very same starfish Marina wears in her hair. And finally, just like last season, there is no big finale, just an ordinary episode. And now the 3rd season. It starts to get old. Everyone moves off the island and onto a cruise ship, and this is where the entire season takes place, with a few exceptions. Aldo is now employed as the ship captain. The entirety of the beach civilization lives on the boat. Kinda stupid on Sharko's part not to throw Zig and Bernie overboard, because they once again try to feast on the mermaid. Not much happens this season. Hades has 2 or 3 appearances, so he's basically out of this season. Poseidon is also barely in it. However, there's tons of new characters, but each only appear for 1 episode. After this season, they become really sick of the sea and want to go back to the island. So, they go back. And now they dock their boat on the beach. So they utilize both the beach and the ship this season. Just when you thought this show was going to end without becoming a fetish show, Marina gets feet. she gets magical flip-flops that, when put on, gives her feet. They focus so much on her feet this season, and that's about it. Hades never appears, no huge events, just feet. This was the final season. Like all of their season finales, nothing finale-like happens. It's as if it's another episode. Between season 3 and 4, the spin-off show called The Adventures of Bernie was released. The exact timeline of the show isn't really certain, so I'm just going to assume it takes place after season 4. Zig and Bernie try once again to capture Marina, but Bernie is accidentally launched into the ocean and then is forced even farther away from the island after a string of events. Bernie spends the entire series trying to get back to Zig and his friends, which make close to no appearances. Well, in the finale of this series, Bernie does not make it home. Finales aren't really Zig and Sharko's thing. Who knows what happened to Bernie? Some say he's still trying to get home till this day. And that's about it for the lore. Thank you all for watching. Wait, hang on. Stop the music. I'm not done. I have to talk about how obscure this island is. The most deranged and mysterious place. There's so many unanswered questions about it. If this island is so deserted with no population, why do boats and freighters stop by? Why do submarines observe it? Why do planes fly over? How and why are there man-made structures on the island? For example, there's a lighthouse and some sort of enclosure for presumably some creature on the island. And connected to this enclosure is an entire room for surveillance with working electricity. Why are there aliens that come and visit? Why is there an entire city down a crevice called the Abyss that is very similar to Rock Bottom from SpongeBob? Why does a god live in a volcano? I think you're starting to see my point. What is so special about this island? Okay, truthfully, I have no clue. They give zero hints as to why this place is so frequented by all these occurrences. I think Marina has something to do with it. She is a mermaid after all, one of the elusive creatures like Bigfoot. Maybe the government or whoever is spying on this place because they know she resides there. Maybe the cage aquarium and surveillance area on the island was for her, but then again, who made it? Marina isn't the only mermaid out there. There's one called the Manic Mermaid, and Sharko falls for her too. My guy definitely has a type. But maybe the cage was made for this mermaid. The show does give an answer, however, but I don't buy it. In multiple episodes, the cage is shown holding the Crazy Dolphin, a character that appears a few times in season 1. However, there are a few episodes where the Crazy Dolphin is nowhere to be seen and the cage is completely empty. And on top of that, the dolphin is just super hyperactive. Why would they need a prison-like cage with surveillance for it? Anyway, back to spying on Marina. The lighthouse makes sense. It's for the freighters, but the freighters don't make sense. A possible reason could be that the island is just another thing the freighters pass by. However, in the lighthouse episode, when the lighthouse stops shining the light for a brief period of time, it shows truly how many boats get lost without it. And with this many boats, the simple passing by excuse doesn't make much sense. The Abyss, aka Zig and Sharko's version of Rock Bottom. Zig and Sharko get stuck down there and have to escape due to being wanted by the police down there. So, like SpongeBob's Rock Bottom, the creatures down there are very, very weird. This episode may seem like a standalone. However, there are several other episodes where extremely weird creatures are featured. The most prominent episode being about a shape-shifting jellyfish. Zig then uses this jellyfish to try and capture Marina, unsuccessfully of course. Another episode features an electric eel that zaps both Zig and Sharko at the same time, which then switches their minds, so Zig ends up in Sharko's body and vice versa. The final creature is the alien that visits the island. He arrives on a UFO, so he maybe isn't from the Abyss. However, he appears extremely similar to the Abyss creatures. Not only that, but he can shapeshift just like the jellyfish. This stuff is weird, but it's about as bad as it gets, right? There's not like unicorns or something, right? Okay, so there is a unicorn that shows up for an episode. So what? It's not like there's lizard people or anything, right? Right? Okay, lizard people show up for an episode and give Zig super protection and doesn't let Sharko lay a finger on him. They end up using Zig's body for toy models for monetary gain. Not exactly what I would have expected. Why does all this weird stuff happen? Is there a cause? Could Hades be pulling the strings? Are there any creatures capable of magic? Of course there is. Buried in the sand, they find a tip of a pyramid. They investigate and find a mummy living inside. Because, of course, they do. Unlike most super minor characters, the mummy actually comes back for another episode. She comes back with multiple cursed items to sell to the beach dwellers. She could be behind these weird creatures, or the weird creatures could simply be like Marina, and just live there like she does, as a result of something. The creatures may not be the only thing that attracts the people to the island. In one episode, there is just a random button on a tree. When pressed, you are taken to essentially the void, but it makes you dance. It's a dancing dimension. So, basically, well, I don't know how to say this without just saying it. Well, I guess, Zig and Sharko wear fursuits. I don't know if Zig is really a hyena, and I don't really know if Sharko is a shark. Every single episode, for the most part, at least 90% of the episodes, have one or more instances that show Zig and Sharko are wearing essentially skin or fursuits, or have a removable body part. When you actually pay attention to how often it occurs, it gets a little disturbing. Constantly, they are taking their fur off, or arms, eyes, whatever. In one episode, his and Sharko's noses switch briefly. In the flashback episodes, Zig's nose is used as a phone. They do this for a visual gag, obviously, and we can chalk this up to being an overused one, but it happens way too often. In Season 1, nearly every episode resulted in Zig getting his body destroyed beyond repair. Yet he is fine, because he actually may not be a living creature. Look at this example. Zig wakes up, not wearing fur, cleans himself up, and then his entire body opens like a suit, and another Zig walks out of that. And Sharko, if he was a shark, he wouldn't be able to live outside of the water, but he is barely in water the entire 4 seasons. Look at this example. Sharko completely unzips his suit. Another thing that he does in so many of the episodes is that when he is getting ready to fight, he rolls up his sleeves. But he doesn't wear sleeves. There's a lot more than this, but I'm not interested in editing a 25-minute Zig and Sharko furry suit compilation. If they aren't animals, what are they? Could be that they are robots. In one episode, Bernie makes an entire army of Zig robots, but they were definitely more primitive than the Zig we know. There is a separate episode, however, where Bernie bionically modifies Zig, and on Bernie's little diagram thing here, it essentially shows Zig's entire body is bionic, which also could explain the phone in his nose. There's a lot of inconsistencies though. If Bernie created Zig, which is unlikely, but if he did, why would he create Sharko to beat him up? If Zig was a robot, why would he constantly be hungry for Marina? But anyway, why do they wear fursuits? I guess I don't have an answer for that. But then again, why does anyone wear fursuits? Not only does Zig like to wear fursuits, but he also cross-dresses like a woman. Like 3 separate times, so I guess he's into that too? Wait, what? Further on the skin and fursuits, Zig and Sharko aren't the only ones. Zig's plans early on mostly consisted of stealing skin, fur, and other body parts from the fellow animals on the island. A few examples: he stole the fur off of a gorilla, he stole the skin or fur, whatever walruses have, and he stole the beaks from toucans. Here is an example from the unicorn episode, where a seal is revealed to be a dolphin in a seal suit. Other details that don't exactly hide that the fur is a suit is sometimes when they have their suits removed, they are wearing underwear underneath it, as if it's an outer layer and not just part of them. There's one more question you might have. Well, realistically, after that huge information dump, there's probably a lot of questions. But one question we've wondered since the beginning of this show: does Zig ever win and eat Marina? Surprisingly, yeah. Zig does consume Marina. Many times actually, all in one episode. One average day, Zig begins to eat Marina. Sharko comes to the rescue, but after multiple things in his way, he is unable to save her and Zig eats her. Sharko is devastated. When he wanders through the forest, he happens to find Hades, abusing a gorilla with his time machine device. He watches the gorilla slip on a banana peel, reverses time just a little bit, and watches it again. Sharko steals this time travel device and does the same thing with Marina. However, he fails again, and Zig eats her. So he reverses time again, but fails. So he reverses time again, and again, and again. Every time, Zig is still successful. Of course though, Sharko trains his way to avoid the obstacles and finally rescue Marina from Zig. There you are, Zig finally won for once. Well, this video went so much deeper than what I could have possibly imagined. Remember, the election is near, and I have to win against my opponent Dung in November. You can vote for me by subscribing. At this point, you've probably heard it, but you don't have to be American, and you don't have to be 18, so there's literally no reason why you shouldn't subscribe.